Hey, what is going on, guys? Lanh here from Android Authority, and it's the biggest of the bunch, but is it really any better? Let's take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 10.1. Alright, so here it is, the Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 10.1, the biggest of the Tab 4 bunch, and it shares the same design language that we've become pretty familiar with Samsung devices. It's entirely made of plastic with a fake leather texture on the back, and while it does a great job of not attracting fingerprints, it doesn't do anything in terms of providing extra grip, but you'll most likely be holding onto this tablet with both hands anyways, so it shouldn't really be too big of a problem. Wrapping around the bezels of the display is Samsung's signature chrome accents, and like I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of it, but it's not so bad on the Tab 4 lineup as they've slimmed them down quite a bit from what we've seen on previous Samsung devices. The tablet itself though does feel very well made, so build quality isn't an issue, and it's very thin, coming in at 8mm, and also very lightweight, making it comfortable to hold for long periods of time. On the front above the display is a 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera, and following along the bottom is Samsung's standard home button with capacitive recent apps and back buttons. And just like the 7 and 8-inch models, they aren't backlit, making them hard to find when using this tablet in the dark. The majority of the buttons and ports can be found on top when holding the tablet in landscape, with the power button followed by the volume rockers. A micro SD card slot with support up to 64 gigs if the 16 gigs on board isn't enough for you, and an IR blaster for controlling your TV through Samsung's built-in Watch On app. On the bottom is your micro USB port, and on the right side above one of the two speakers is your 3.5mm headset jack. And speaking of the speakers, it's a dual speaker setup that can be found on the left and right sides, which is a big improvement over the tiny speaker on the 7 and 8-inch models that can easily be covered up by a single finger. They still don't compare to having front-facing speakers, but placement on the sides means you can have the tablet resting on a table without having to worry about muffling the sound, and they're placed in such a way that you'll never have to worry about blocking them with your hands, whether you're holding the tablet in landscape or in portrait. The sound quality is actually pretty good too, with great clarity even at max volume. The 10.1-inch display on the front, while not the most high resolution or pixel dense that we've seen on a tablet or any mobile device in general, it's not really all that bad. I will admit pixels definitely are noticeable if you look close enough, but being that it's a 10.1-inch display, you're probably going to be holding this a little farther from your face than a 7 or 8-inch tablet, and it's got very bright and vivid colors with great viewing angles like most Samsung panels tend to, so it's actually very enjoyable, and I had quite a fun time playing games and watching movies on it. As with pretty much all 10-inch tablets, the bigger display does mean you're not going to be able to hold it in one hand and carry it around like you would a 7 or 8-inch tablet, and it's not going to fit in your back pocket obviously, but you can still easily fit it in a book bag and carry it around that way. But so it's not quite as portable as a smaller tablet, but that's sort of the trade-off when you decide to go with a tablet with a bigger display. It's a mid-range tablet, so the specs powering this guy aren't going to blow you away either with its 1.2 GHz processor and 1.5 GB of RAM, but the general performance through day-to-day usage has been smooth with very little hiccups, whether it's scrolling through home screens or opening up apps, and multitasking wasn't an issue either. Web browsing performance could be a little bit better though, at least on Google Chrome, where pinching and zooming or scrolling tended to be a little bit jerky. Gaming is good though, as I was able to play all of my favorite games without any noticeable lag or dropped frames. Around back is the same 3 megapixel fixed focus camera that can be found across the entire Tab 4 lineup. It wasn't any good on the 7-inch model, and it wasn't any good on the 8-inch model, and it's not any better on the 10.1. Most likely the camera on your phone takes better photos, and you're not going to look as silly as you would taking photos with a 10-inch tablet, but if you absolutely must have to, it's a good secondary option. It performs best when outdoors or anywhere with a lot of light, but with 3 megapixels, photos completely fall apart if you try to zoom and crop. And the second you take this camera indoors, photos become grainy quick, especially in low light. Keeping this 10-inch tablet powered is a pretty large 6800 milliamp hour battery, and like I mentioned before, I'm a pretty heavy user when it comes to tablets. I primarily only use them for gaming and watching YouTube videos and movies, things like that. But even with my usage, I managed to get a couple of days out of it with about 8.5 hours of screen on time, which is pretty impressive. I thought it was pretty impressive anyway. So it lasted me quite a long time, and I think with pretty regular usage, you could probably get at least 3 to 4 days out of this tablet before having to recharge. On the software side of things, it is running the latest version of Android with 4.4.2 KitKat and Samsung's TouchWiz on top. And I'm not the biggest fan of TouchWiz. I don't really like the way that it looks, and I don't care too much for a lot of Samsung's features, but it's certainly an improvement over previous versions, and the version of TouchWiz on the Tab 4 line of tablets is a little bit lighter in comparison to something you'd find on the Galaxy S5 or Samsung's own Pro series of tablets. So there's no My Magazine or Magazine UX, whatever you want to call it, air gestures, and fewer toggles built into the notification shade. But all the staple features of TouchWiz that have been around for a while now are still here, like multi-window for true multitasking, palm swipe for taking a screenshot, which is very useful, especially on a 10-inch display, and Smart Stay, which keeps the display lit for as long as you are looking at it. The Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 10.1 is available now for $350. It's Wi-Fi only as of right now, but there will be 3G and LTE models coming to carriers later this year if you need that extra connectivity. And whether or not this tablet is worth it, that's purely going to be up to you to decide, as there's not a whole lot of options to consider right now in terms of this particular price range. There's the Sony Xperia Z2 tablet, but that's a couple extra $100, and then there's the Nexus 10, which is around the same price, but it's technically not for sale. I'm pretty sure if you dig deep enough, you could probably find it, but it's technically not available anymore. So there's not a whole lot of options to consider, but if you do decide to get this tablet, it certainly isn't a bad option whatsoever. But that is it for the Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 10.1. It's a decent tablet with a decent display, solid build quality, dual speakers, and pretty awesome battery life. It doesn't have the latest and the greatest specs, but it wasn't really meant to, and I think if you're to go out there and pick one up for yourself, you might like it, as I found it to be the most enjoyable one of the bunch. But that is pretty much it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, give it a thumbs up down below, and also subscribe to the channel as well, which is also down below. And once you're done doing all of that, make sure to check out the website at androidauthority.com for more in-depth coverage. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and keep it locked on Android Authority, as we are your source for all things Android.